USA Scientific works side by side with you to provide high-performance tools for your next discovery. Get your free sample today at usascientific.com/mastertools.
LinkedIn presents.
Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. If you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Cinzia Campanini about learnings from the 4-day work week. Cinzia Campanini, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. Great to be here.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Zurich. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about the 4-day work week. You are the Vice President of People and Culture at AWIN, and you've recently done a really great pilot with the 4-day work week. And so we're going to talk about all the learnings from that and really unpack that and explore it together. As we get started, I'll share a more complete bio with everybody. Cinzia Campanini is the Vice President of People and Culture at AWIN, a global affiliate marketing company which has been recognized in various countries for its workplace culture and provides employees a variety of well-being initiatives, the 4-day work week, a hybrid remote work regime, working from home subsidies, and more. She brings a wealth of experience in HR business partnering, change management, and people and culture transformation from global organizations in the media, consulting, and industrial sectors. And I could go on, but I'm going to pause there. Anything else you would like to highlight by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, indeed. I've been lucky enough to do HR, or people and culture, as we call it at AWIN, in different companies, different industries, in different countries. As you said, I'm based in Switzerland. I'm originally Italian. I used to live in Germany. I lived in the US for a while. Absolutely, I love my job. I'm really committed to it and really passionate about bringing out the best in every organization that are people, and finding that balance that is a recurring topic for me that really can make the business successful.
So why don't you give us more of a background now to AWIN and this 4-day work week pilot, and then we can really start to unpack the learnings from that, and what went well, maybe what didn't go as expected that you tweaked, and really how you're going to be moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So AWIN started a 4-day week pilot for all staff way earlier than way before I joined, actually, and way before it became part of a larger pilot. For example, I know in the UK, there was a pilot that ran last year from June to December with 60 plus companies. AWIN introduced the 4 days week as a pilot beginning of 2021. And then it was extended. So the trial phase was extended twice as we tweaked some of the details of it. And then started July 1st, it's become a just one of our benefits, our normal way of working, I would say. So it's embedded in our agreements with employees, and it's just really what we do in all of the 13 countries where we're present. To be clear, some people typically ask me, does it mean the company shuts down on Fridays or anything like that? No, every employee chooses with their manager which day of the week they'll be taking off. And this can also change, obviously, based on business needs, personal circumstances. So we, of course, make sure we're committed to serving our customers at any time. As you said, we're an affiliate marketing company, so we're always on supporting our customers in growing their business through online marketing campaigns. Also, and this is one of the tweaks we introduced the so-called peak times. At the moment, it's up to 9 per year. So these are weeks during which employees can be asked to work 5 days a week, for example, around Black Friday or any other particularly busy times for e-commerce. Yeah. And now, as I said, this is a permanent benefit. Since you mentioned, what have been the pros and cons and the learning. So the fact that we went from piloting it to adopting it as a permanent way of working already shows you that it's been quite successful so far. In particular, if I can name some numbers, because I love my data, we observed that so-called regrettable employee turnover has decreased by 33% compared to end of 2020 when it was introduced. Sick leave days by 21%. I think this is a really interesting data point because it suggests that a shorter week helps people maintain their physical and mental health. We've also won several employee awards, Glassdoor, and in different countries. Our NPS scores from customers have gone up by 20.7%. This is really crucial. From the beginning, we decided to not only monitor, internal satisfaction, which is probably what you would largely expect, but also our business KPIs, right? So our customers' NPS scores have gone up. And our gross profit compounded annual growth rate went up by about 13%. Needless to say, employees are happy. As a summary of it, an internal survey we did last year shows that the vast majority of employees not only feel less stressed and they feel like their mental health is improved, they also say they are more productive at work in the 4 days and that they believe the quality of their work has improved.
Those are amazing statistics, great outcomes. Now, in the US, when we talk about 4-day work weeks, a lot of times it means, you're taking, at a minimum 40 hours a week, maybe up to 60 plus hours a week. And now instead of doing it in 5 days, you're just doing it in 4 days. So now you're working 4 10-hour days instead of 5 10-hour days. Is that how you've approached it? Or are you keeping, an 8-hour workday, you're just reducing it down to 4?
Right. So we have left this relatively loose, right, in terms of both contractually, because on the one hand, the goal would not to be, for people to work 10 hours a day over 4 days, even assuming just the 40 days week. That would not be the goal, but realistically, there had to be a learning curve, right? You can't expect necessarily to pack the amount of work of 5 days into 4 without any changes. So in parallel, we have worked massively on improving automation, on improving processes, on introducing new tools that support us being more effective. And really a key word here is flexibility. Some people might decide to work 10 hours a day for 4 days, and they're okay with that because they're so happy to have a 3 days weekend. Some people are so energized having a longer weekend that they are so productive. And that's what the survey tells us, that they don't really need to work that much longer on the other 4 days. So this is also largely something that each person chooses for themselves. And we left it on purpose as much as we could. We left it open, right? We don't want to tell you how many hours we need to work. We give you the option to work. By the way, we call it flexi week. So it's not necessarily 4 days. It can be 3 days plus 2 half days. You are free, whether it's a peak time or not, to work indeed on the 5th day if you feel that, you were tired the day before, or you feel like you really need to finish up something. So the key word here is really flexibility and trust, mutual trust that you will do what you know as an employee that you need to do. And another key concept here is a constant exchange between the employee and the manager and the company overall. We do a pulse survey every 2 weeks. And so if the employee feels that the 4 days week is not really helping their case, it's really crucial for them to speak with their manager, with their people and culture business partner, and say, why? Is the amount of work just so much that it's not manageable in 4 days? But if that's the case, probably it was a problem to begin with the 5 days week. I may also point out, in terms of our footprint, we are a very international company. Our headquarters are in Berlin, Germany. One of our largest locations is in London. So Awin was created by merging a company in Berlin with a company in London. We do have offices in the US as well, and in several other countries, a total of 13 countries. But and maybe it helps that the European working culture is typically a little bit more orientated toward work-life balance. We have a works council in Germany, for example, and we constantly discuss with them. And work-life balance is one of the super important concepts in many European cultures. I don't want to generalize too much because Europe is very diverse. The US are also diverse, I know, but in Europe, you really have, even from a labor law standpoint, very different traditions. But it does help that some of our countries where we have very strong roots tend to have a culture that is, pretty much oriented toward balance. Yeah, of course, you have to work a lot and be productive, but you're probably going to be more productive if you have enough time to recharge.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I ask is because there's a lot of research that shows not only the benefits of moving to a 4-day or kind of more flexible work schedule and arrangement, but also within a given day. There's studies out of Harvard, MIT, and other places, that suggest the workday maybe should be more like 6 hours instead of 8 hours, for example. Studies that suggest that, in a knowledge economy, when people are doing really heavy knowledge work, strategic work, really creative work, that really you're not getting much more than 2 to 3 hours out of a person doing that kind of work a day, because that's just not the way we function. And so it's interesting. I appreciate your approach. So in the US, when I hear about someone just moving to, 4 10s instead of 5 8s, I'm thinking, okay, that's great. I think people will like having that day off, having a 3-day weekend, having more time with family and friends, etc. But how productive are they being in those days where they're working 10 hours? Now, sometimes you work 10 hours, sometimes you work 12, 14 hours. Everyone has those experiences, but if you're consistently always working 10 hours, the average person, are they really going to be super productive during those 10 hours? And so I appreciate your approach, of just essentially outlining, this is what your job is. This is what needs to get done. We're going to trust you. We're going to give you flexibility. Your work needs to be done. It needs to be done well. It needs to be done at high quality. But ultimately, it's between you and your boss to figure out, what your work arrangement's going to be. We're going to provide the flexibility. And, if you work in 10 hours, 4 days a week, and that's working for you, great. If you're able to do really great work, but you get it done, and you're working 32 hours a week because you're only working 4 8s, great. And I suspect, some people are doing more, half days throughout the week. So they just have more time every day. And I suppose it doesn't ultimately matter. And some types of jobs, it does matter. When you're customer facing, having a person working and covering customer service and those sorts of things, that matters. But a lot of knowledge work, it doesn't really matter when or where you work. It doesn't matter how long you work, as long as you're good at your job and productive and effective. And so all of this, I really like your approach, because it's demonstrating a shift in the mentality, kind of the old norms around work design, and suggesting perhaps there's a better way where we can not only lean into self-care and work-life balance and work-life integration and helping our people to be healthy mentally and physically, but they're going to be more productive. Like I'm going to perform at a higher level when I'm well rested, when I've taken care of myself, and I may not be putting in as many hours, but I'm producing more, right? And that's a mindset shift that a lot of organizations still are struggling with. And a lot of leaders, especially those from kind of the old school mentality, are still struggling with to grapple with.
Yeah, and you touched upon a very important point, what you call knowledge work. I have to say at Awin, we are, let's say, a purely, let's call it white collar company, right? We are not in the manufacturing sector. We don't have factories. And I say this because this is crucial. Our work mentality is still largely rooted in the Industrial Revolution, where, yeah, that type of job does give you a more direct correspondence or a proportional relationship between the amount of hours you put in and the amount of output. And even there we could question, right, whether a blue collar worker after 10 hours is not too exhausted to actually do their job properly. But in that case, there is a proportionality there. When it comes to, as you called it, knowledge work, and a lot of the jobs we have at Awin, some of them require a lot of creativity. They might require managerial savviness. They might require a certain type of creativity and more just knowledge. In that case, this proportionality is just not there, or it is up to a certain point and then it plateaus, right? So as you said, after 6 hours, your brain is not going to be as productive as it was 6 hours ago, no matter how much you want to think that you should still put in more hours. So exactly. So I always say this might not work for every company out there. It depends largely on the business model, on the type of jobs you have. It definitely does work for a tech company that also has the luxury, if you will, like we do, to work very internationally, to have a hybrid work model, which if you want, I can tell you more about, but what we call Flexi Week is also mirrored in our what we call Flexi Office policy. So we also grant a lot of flexibility in terms of where people work from. Yeah. And I would like to add one more thing. When you said earlier, very correctly, in my view, you said, people are going to be more well rested. So they're going to be more productive while they work. They're also going to be more engaged because they're going to be thankful to their employer. They're going to want to stay, maybe even for a salary that's not the best, the highest salary out there. They're going to want to stay even if a headhunter gives them a call. They're going to want to give you back as an employer because you're giving them a lot of trust and flexibility.
Yeah, I love that. And these elements go hand in hand. The Flexi Week, as you describe it. So flexible work arrangements, hybrid remote options, distributed teams, 4-day work weeks, all of this. I think the bottom line is adaptability and flexibility, right? And whether, if for anyone in the audience, whether your organization is ever going to get their heads around this idea of a 4-day week, whether you term it that way, whether you end up working that way or not, I think the bottom line here is flexibility. We need to be adaptive. We need to be flexible. We need to be responsive to the needs of our people, not only so we're taking care of them and they're given the chance to perform well, but if we're going to attract and retain good people in this modern labor market, it's just a requirement. There's no way around it. We're not going to get good people. We're not going to retain good people if we're too rigid. And so many organizations, especially in the US, so many organizations are trying to just get people back to the office. They're like, we did this thing for 3 years. Now we just want people back. Everyone come back. And they're struggling. Like, people have shifted their expectations around work. They want more flexibility. And it doesn't mean that people don't want to be back in the office. I think most people like a variety. They like working from home sometimes. They like being able to work anywhere sometimes, but they also like some time in the office. That's why hybrid is so wonderful. You get the best of every world. And so just let's think about flexibility. Maybe for your organization, that means some form of flex week, 4-day work week. Maybe it doesn't, but I think all of us can probably build in more flexibility to the way we approach work design and how we're approaching trying to get the most out of our teams and giving them the best chance to be productive, effective, and ultimately just do cool stuff, creative, innovative stuff that's going to add value to the market.
Absolutely. And this is an interesting point, the fact that a lot of people also here in Europe, or a lot of companies, are starting to call people back into the office at least a few days a week. It is also true, and we have to point it out, that we're coming from a few years of very low unemployment rates in many countries. I would say Western countries, they've been at all-time lows. Yeah. It was an employees market. There's this book by the CEO of Stepstone about an untranslatable German word, but basically the word for unemployment in German is, it means lack of work. And that word that he coined is lack of workers. Yeah. So there's a broader perspective to this. But long story short, we all know we're coming from a few years where employees, especially in the tech sector, let's say in the white collar world, felt very much empowered, right? There's a lot of jobs and they can make their choice. So they have raised their expectations towards employers, right? They can afford to be picky. And the younger generations, the late millennials, Generation Z, they have a particularly high expectation towards their employer. There's this sense that the employer has to really be people-centric, has to have a bigger purpose, has to offer a lot of perks as well, right? To bring it down to a very pragmatic level. Now, it is true that we're starting to see a shift. I think it's important to acknowledge that. All the layoffs, especially in the US, but in many tech companies, it's happening in Europe as well in a different way, because European law is also in general much more protected than the employee than it is in the US, for example. But this is shifting a little bit. So I already see some tension rising there in the employees market, where suddenly maybe you don't have 3 job offers at the same time, right? And if you get one, you don't have that much space to negotiate for certain benefits or certain things. So there is a balance. Again, I go back to balance to be found there. Another aspect that it's been one of our learnings from the Flexi Week and from our very flexible, as we call it, Flexi Office, is that what you were saying before, the appreciation, the fact that people feel loyal and appreciative that the company is giving them all of this and treating them like adults, really. It tends to be subject to, I don't know if you've heard of the hedonic adaptation concept or the hedonic treadmill, right? And we see a bit of a difference. As I mentioned, we have a bi-weekly pulse survey or engagement survey, and we do see, obviously it's anonymous, but we can see the demographics, right? We can split up the results by tenure and by age group and all that. And we do see that, boomers, Generation X, and let's say early millennials, so to speak, they are still very proud and very happy because they were there before the pandemic. They were there when it was normal to work 5 days a week. They know how special it is that we have the 4 days a week. They know how special it is that we are still giving employees a huge amount of flexibility. So we still have the nice offices, but most managers let their employees decide when they're going to go to the office and when they won't. And then we have the younger generations that maybe entered the workforce shortly before the pandemic or even during the pandemic. And for them, I don't want to say that they take it for granted, but this is also not seen as the huge benefit, as that, competitive advantage that my generation might see it as, so to speak. Yeah. So this is interesting. And I think the key to this is, again, to go back to balance and to transparency. We do have employees sometimes that ask us about, the 3 days a week, or why do we have the 9 peak times a year? And it's a legitimate question. I would never want to say, the younger generations are spoiled or entitled. That's not it. It is simply a matter of, the world they've come to know and the world that we still have to live in, right? There's a lot of talk. I was at the CHRO conference the other day, and there was a lot of talk around the 3 Ps: people, purpose, and profit, and how the younger generations think that people and purpose should be in the center. And I absolutely subscribe to that. But as an HR executive, I have to say, without the 3rd P, without profit, there's not going to be any money for anybody's salary, for anybody's benefit. So we need to go I would say, back to this concept of balance. And you reach that through transparency, to saying, we're already giving you a lot. We can't give you more than this right now. Also because, a lot of countries are on the verge of a gloomy recession. And so I find that this open dialogue, this reality check that you need to have constantly on how to balance the 3 Ps is really crucial, especially as we have different generations in the workforce.
Yeah, very well said. This has just been a great conversation. It's been really fun to learn more about AWIN and what you're doing, all the really cool things. And I applaud you for the good work and the forward-thinking, progressive approach that you're taking to work design and flexibility for your workers. I know at the time I need to let you go here in just a minute, but before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Thank you. Absolutely. So happy for you to connect with me on LinkedIn on Cinzia Campanini. I'm not very active on other social media because as a neuropsychologist by background, a few years ago, I decided to give it a try and shut down most of my social media and see if that helps with some of the social anxiety, and it did. But I am on LinkedIn pretty much every day, so everyone is absolutely welcome to connect with me on there. I recently gave an interview also covering some of these topics, so they want to find out more, they'll find it linked there. And other than that, please check out our AWIN webpage. There is a nice infographic covering some of the things that I told you today about the Flexi Week, 4 days week. And definitely you can find out more there.
Wonderful. It has been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience again to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Cinzia can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page. And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.